Welcome back. Once again, before we start, I have another podcast trailer to play for you. This time, you'll be hearing from Horror Roulette.
Hello, and welcome to Horror Roulette, where you never know what you're going to get. We're your hosts. I'm Em, and that's my brother Nick.
Each week, we spin the wheel of misfortune to randomly generate an episode topic, which makes our lives miserable, but this podcast listenable.
We've covered everything from the Toy Box Killer to Jack and Jill.
From Ed Wood to Black Widows, we've suffered through it all.
Find us wherever you listen to podcasts and check us out at horrorroulette.com.
Listen if you dare.
Here we go. Back again.
Hello, everybody.
What's up? Or not that, you know.
Yeah, it's not 2001.
Yeah. Back again. I see Eilidh.
Yeah, I decided to come back for the 4th episode.
Good.
The 5th is up for debate. You may have to just do that one yourself. But I'm here for this one.
See, my witty remarks in isolation, probably not very witty. As a whole podcast of just me sitting here.
Well, especially with nothing to jump off from.
Exactly.
So you need the raw material with which to make jokes.
Yes. I don't just have a stand-up routine that I can give on microphone.
Maybe you should. Maybe that's
should.
an avenue you should explore. You could do
Perhaps.
sit-down comedy at your desk.
The sit-down comedy podcast that exists.
Probably.
Probably. Well, I hope you enjoyed the trailer from Horror Roulette.
It's nice to be able to share podcasts with you.
Yeah.
Who are awesome.
Other
and amazing.
Cool independent creators.
Yeah.
Well, I'm excited for today because I was promised things were going to get bloody. I'm pretty sure.
I think we talked about it at the end of the last episode.
Yes.
Or possibly in the blether that we have on Patreon.
Possibly. I can't remember. But these were gradually getting more gruesome.
Yes.
And I think the changelings are still up there with like emotional upset.
Yes, I would agree that is still the case.
Yeah, but I believe things were promised to get more gruesome.
Yes, this week and next week things are getting gruesome. Things are getting gory.
Things are getting bad.
We're getting a little bit darker this week.
How exciting. As it gets a little bit darker outside.
I know.
Into August, the nights are creeping in.
It's almost like we planned it.
Oh. Well, should we roll some music and just dive in?
That's a very quick intro.
I know.
You're getting right to the point.
I'm excited to be here.
Laser focused.
What do we have today?
Well, I've collected a few different legends and I've given them my own umbrella term. I've kind of brought them together.
Are you making history?
No.
Oh.
Although, depending on when this comes out, as of like today or tomorrow, we will have crossed 25,000 total downloads.
That is making history.
Speaking of making history,
This
is
exciting.
Making podcast history.
Yep. That's a big milestone.
Yeah, that is very exciting. So thank you.
Thank you.
If you've listened.
To all you awesome listeners who continue to listen.
25,000.
Yeah.
That is insane.
A big thank you to those of you who tell your friends to listen too.
Yeah, you guys are the main reason that the podcast grows.
Yeah.
That's the main way that podcasts get around is word of mouth. So thank you if you've done that with anyone.
Yeah.
We appreciate it.
Much appreciated.
And we're excited to bring you another season.
I know. It's closing in. I'm excited. Season 4.
Good job. Well done. Remembering your own content that you publish.
Yeah, baby. Wait, I can't remember if I said this, but over on Patreon, Eilidh gave me the generally spooky quiz for season 1.
I did.
And it was various questions about like dates and the cast of characters that we featured.
I basically just asked him things he should already know.
Yeah, because it's things we talked about in the podcast.
I tried not to be too mean.
And I did shockingly badly. Like 40% correct. So bad. Quite embarrassing. So the fact I know it's season 4 coming out is pretty good.
And if you want to hear that quiz, if you join Patreon, you get our entire back catalogue available to you, depending on the tier you join. So you can go back and listen to that if you like.
If you want a half-hour episode of me getting embarrassed and Eilidh going,
Get
why
your
are you
ass
not
handed
paying
to you?"
attention?
Well, yes, this week. So that was a tangent. I just wanted to bring up the downloads because I'm very excited
exciting.
about it. This week, we are talking about the Washerwomen of Scottish fairy lore,
Interesting.
which will make more sense as we go.
Yes.
Because that's not their official title. It's just a name that I've given this genre.
Gonna make it a thing.
I mean, I'll explain later. It will make more sense. It's
Yes.
kind of already a thing. But they're not usually referred to that way altogether.
As a collective.
And like I was saying, that from this episode on till next episode, things are like a bit dark and a bit gory. So if that isn't your thing, I would just check out now.
Yeah.
Just look after yourself. You know what you can take. There are like mentions of blood and battle and things. So if that's not your thing, I would click off now and we will see you in season 4 probably. Where things aren't much better.
I wonder how many people get caught out with that. Particularly like young kind of like kids and things who are into fairies in Disney movies and stuff. Maybe like drawing pictures of fairies, like books about fairies. They're like, I want to learn more. And then they Google it and find out fairies are just vicious.
Probably quite a lot, I would imagine.
Yeah.
Since kids today.
Kids today.
Google is so open to them.
Yeah.
So you can just find these things out.
But it probably happened once upon a time where you get like the Grimm's fairy tales collections and then you read them, you're like, oh my god.
Yeah. And then that's your first experience. I still remember going, it wasn't even to a library because the place I stayed in wasn't big enough to have a proper library. So in my primary school, we had the library van.
Oh yeah.
That came round.
The mobile library.
Mm-hmm. Great service. Absolutely amazing. Support your library. They're doing an amazing thing. But the library van came round and I remember getting this book, borrowing this book that was all about like ghost stories and like real hauntings across the UK. And that was the first time I'd ever come across anything like that. And I was glued to this book. And I can't even remember the story fully. But there was this story about this nun, this like ghost nun. And I had nightmares for weeks. Weeks. I couldn't sleep with the door closed to my room. I had to have it fully open and I had to have the hall light on because then that would light up my whole room. Because I was convinced that this ghost nun was going to come and get me. And it was from that book, and that was the first time I'd ever read anything like that.
Yeah. The love of the spooking begun.
Yeah, pretty much. But that's how it happens.
That is how it happens. That's how they get you.
Mm-hmm. Wonder how many kids we've corrupted.
I know. Who are going to end up on here and we're like, oh, that sounds fun. Ah!
Sorry,
parents. But not really.
Not really.
I'm not that invested. I'm not really sorry.
Well, to fully understand the washerwomen of Scottish folklore, as I'm calling them, we actually have to turn to Irish folklore.
Hello. Hello to our Irish listeners.
Yes, hello. It's very nice to have you here. I feel like cousins in arms.
Yep.
I've mentioned it before now in other episodes, but there are lots of overlaps between Scottish and Irish folklore because they both have this common Celtic root. It's the same with Welsh folklore. It happens there too. There's overlap. So some of the same figures and stories and creatures appear in both or many folklores across the country.
Yep.
Which I think is pretty cool.
Yeah, I think it's super interesting how these things can travel.
But depending on where they end up, they have their own twists and their own versions.
Yeah.
Depending on the people who live there, which is even more interesting. Because I think it tells you about the people who are telling the story.
Yeah, it gives you an insight into their fears a lot of the time and their struggles.
It's really interesting.
Yeah.
So I am going to tell you a bit about banshees.
Ooh.
Now, that should be a term you've heard before, Kieran. Surely.
Yes, I am familiar with banshees. I've met a few in my time.
Is that a loaded comment? Or
no comment. No further comment.
I mean, You're going to have to sit here and listen to the podcast. You're probably going to have to further comment.
No further comment.
Okay, guys, it's just me doing the podcast.
Kieran's sitting awkwardly.
It's just me. You've heard of banshees before?
I have.
Good. If you're listening to the episode and you haven't heard of banshees, that's totally fine. I'm going to explain.
Well, that's
I
lucky.
Just get a bit despairing when Kieran has never heard of things that I treat as common knowledge.
Yep, happens a lot.
And it baffles me every time. So I try to take the little wins where I can get them.
I'm the worst that way.
There's just so many things you don't know. And I'm always surprised you don't know them. Because it's not... To me, they aren't things that, you have to be super smart or like read everything to know. There's just some really strange gaps in knowledge.
It just doesn't stick in my brain. Some things just don't. I'll hear them like, oh, cool. Then I've forgotten within like 15 minutes.
See the quiz on Patreon for more on that.
Yes. Banshees.
Banshees are predominantly present in Irish folklore, like I said, but legends of banshees also appear in Scottish stories. Now, the Gaelic for a banshee is ban-she.
Oh.
So it's B-A-N is the first word, and then the second word is S-I-T-H.
The dog's scared of banshees. That's an unusual spelling. S-I-T-H.
Yeah, it's pronounced she, and then it's Gaelic for fairy. Remember we talked about it in the first episode, or first or second, we were talking about Glen-she and Schiehallion.
Oh, yes. I'm with you.
And this translates to woman of the fairies, banshee. And from what I've been able to see, banshees are pretty much always female. I haven't found a story of a male banshee anywhere.
Not a ban him.
No. And they're known for screaming.
Yes. Howl of the banshee.
Yes. Something you've heard of,
It
you're
is.
familiar with.
It's all like, ah. And you're like, ah.
A bit worse than that. You're going to have to dial that up considerably more, but I don't want you to do that into the microphone. But if you've heard of the banshee, you've probably heard of like their screaming and their wailing. The screaming like a banshee is a common saying. And in short, a banshee's scream was supposed to foretell death.
Ooh. Ominous.
This is how you know you're on the right podcast. There's lots of different descriptions of what banshees look like. They're all pretty scary. Usually they have long flowing hair, which is sometimes red. They wear long dresses and long cloaks, and these could be white, grey or green. So kind of ghostly, kind of nature-y.
Yep, very nice.
And their eyes are usually super red and bloodshot
Ew.
because they spend so much of their time weeping and wailing.
That makes sense.
It's just such a horrifying image.
It's quite something, isn't it?
Banshees have always really creeped me out.
Yeah. I played an awful lot of Warcraft 3 in school, and banshees were one of the units.
Oh.
That's why I'm more of the undead, obviously.
Yeah, that makes sense. In some of the stories, the banshees are really, really short. And in others, they're really, really tall.
Tall would be scarier, I think.
That's what I think.
Tall and kind of like skeletal in stature.
Very thin. And,
Yeah.
Yeah. But in some of the stories, they're super, super short.
That's just more humorous to me, and I don't know why, because it would be equally as terrifying.
Well, yeah, they still foretell the same thing, but you just don't get taken as seriously.
Yep. Society.
But imagine for a minute that this is a concept that you really believe in.
Yeah.
Really terrifying.
Super terrifying.
Like imagining yourself hearing a truly horrific scream in the night and knowing that because you've heard it, there's a good chance that it's predicting your death or the death of someone you know.
It's not a pleasant way to live, is it?
Like if you think about how that would feel if you actually believe that that was true,
Yeah.
that would be terrifying.
That would be terrifying.
An even worse image to pile on top of how terrifying that one would be is a group of banshees all screaming and wailing at once.
That's not a good time. Ooh, what would you call a group of them? I feel like a murder of banshees. Kind of like crows. You know?
A sorrow of banshees.
Ooh, that's a good one. Yeah.
A cacophony of
Maybe
banshees.
a coven of banshees.
Anyway, this was supposed to happen if the death of someone holy or someone really important was about to happen.
Okay.
Which, you know, would be very ominous. You hear all of this screaming and all of it together is overwhelming. And you know what that means, but you don't know who it's going to happen to.
Who's it for?
Yeah.
Yeah, that would be beyond terrifying.
It's very creepy.
It's very creepy.
I feel like banshees are something that you might take for granted as part of folklore, but when you really imagine what it would have been like if you believe that was true.
It's always what I struggle with, believing that people believed this wholeheartedly. A lot of people, I don't imagine everyone did, but it was a largely held belief.
So even if you don't believe it, thinking about the people who did.
Yeah.
And it must have been a really terrible sound because a banshee's scream was supposed to be able to break glass.
Oh yes, I've heard that. That's piercing, isn't it? Yeah.
Now I've heard that you only hear the banshee screaming if their scream is for you, but I've heard other versions of that as well, as standard.
As usual.
If you drank every time I've said that over this series, you'd be pissed by now.
Pissed.
Pissed, you'd be absolutely pissed.
Away with the fairies.
Don't say that. In some stories, the banshee only foretells the death of the family that she's attached to.
Oh.
So kind of like the brownies that we
Yeah.
talked about in the first episode, except brownies were usually attached to a particular home or farm where they would help out. Banshees were a little different, that they were attached to the family,
Interesting.
not the property they lived on. So they would stay with the same family for generations
That's unusual.
rather than the land.
Oh, that's just Gladys, the family banshee. Just ignore her. She'll wander on.
Am I making sense? There's the
Yeah.
distinction between them.
Absolutely.
In Scottish legends, a banshee would be attached to a particular clan,
Oh.
and a clan's banshee would warn them of a death in the clan,
Interesting.
which we'll come back to in a bit because I have a spooky story related to
Ooh.
this, which is creepy. In Ireland, it's a little bit different. Some legends say that banshees only warned people who were of strictly Irish descent that they were going to die.
Oh, yeah.
Even down to specific surnames. Like one of the rules I saw was that only people who had surnames that started with O apostrophe or like MC, like
Oh, yeah.
Mac,
Uh-huh.
would be warned by a banshee.
Interesting.
But that's a pretty wide scope because there's lots of people in Ireland with surnames that
Yeah.
start O something or Mick something.
Yes. There's got to be most of them.
Certainly a high degree.
Yeah.
It's the same as here. Like there's so many people with a surname that starts MAC.
Yeah. Yeah, I was picking up a card with my name on it, and they had one tub for all the surnames, and then another tub for M. And the M tub was twice as full as the everything else tub was.
There's a lot of surnames that start with M in Scotland.
Yeah.
If you're interested, if you do family history or genealogy or anything like that, generally, if a surname starts MC, it has an Irish root. And if it starts MAC, then it has a Scottish root. But they both mean the son of.
Oh, I didn't know that. I get asked a lot if I'm MAC or MC for Macquarie.
I mean, you get both. I'm not saying it's exclusive.
Yeah.
Now, there's plenty of people who are Scottish who have an MC, but usually I think that's the difference.
Yeah. That's interesting.
I think it's interesting. Other people might not. I do. There's also stories from Ireland that describe the banshee singing laments or laments. I think it's laments.
Laments.
Laments. I'll go with laments, which are mourning songs, like really passionately sad songs. So they sing rather than scream. And they'll sing these for members of the family that they're attached to that aren't even at home. So you might have family members who have moved away,
Yeah.
but if they die, the banshee is singing with the family. So if you imagine you're at home with the folks, you hear the lament of the banshee, but no one dies. You're just kind of waiting.
Yeah, waiting for news, which wouldn't travel fast necessarily.
But then you get the news of the death of a family member, and you knew about it days before.
Ooh. It'd mess you up.
So the banshee is your first warning that something's not right.
Yeah. I'm still finding it weird that a family banshee as an idea. Because would you see them about?
Well,
would you know that's them?
Surprisingly, I don't find it that weird.
No?
Well, because the concept of having spirits associated with a specific family crosses so many cultures.
Yeah.
Like in a lot of Asian cultures, you are protected and you pay homage to your ancestors because they actively are engaged with the family and protect the family.
That's true.
Or you'd have certain gods that your family might pay tribute to in ancient Rome.
Yeah, that's a very good point. I think I'm just too literal. I'm like, well, what's the banshee just doing all day, for the occasion it needs to scream at somebody? It's just hanging out, watching the telly.
But if she's a different being, then time probably doesn't matter.
Ooh.
Existence probably doesn't happen in the same way.
Yeah, that is strange.
You just have to break the mold, man.
Yeah, I was getting my mind blown listening to something about like time being a construct, that outside of Earth, time is different because we do it by the sun's rotations. Sorry, the Earth's rotation of the sun, and that's just arbitrary to us. I'm like, oh, that's a bit weird, isn't it? Anyway, we won't go there.
Well, you know what I'm saying? Like,
yes.
It could just be completely different.
Yeah.
You're thinking about it as a human. You know what I'm curious about in relation to this idea of the banshee singing about family members that are away? I'm wondering if there are any more modern stories where a family believe they heard a banshee who predicted the death of a loved one fighting in like the war, like World War One, World War Two.
Yeah.
Because a lot of these stories are from a long time ago.
Yeah.
But I wonder if the belief endured, or people believe that they heard a banshee screaming and then found out that a son in France or like fighting in Japan had died.
Yeah.
In more modern times.
Curious. I wonder when these, I suppose it was probably with the Industrial Revolution, but I wonder when these beliefs started to fade. Like when it became suddenly unfashionable almost.
Well, it's probably what we talked about in the Changeling episode, that changes to industry probably had a lot to do with it.
Yeah.
Because you were leaving home and you were leaving your traditions behind you.
Because if I met up with the boys and we're hanging out.
The boys.
And I was like, oh, guys, I think I heard a banshee yesterday. They'd all look at me and go, what the fuck are you talking about? But if that was 200 years ago, maybe 3, 5, however long, they would have all been concerned for me. But I feel you would be inclined to be embarrassed to say something like that today.
But I think, I would argue, it depends on who your friends are.
It does, and it depends on, I would be embarrassed to say that, but others wouldn't be, I'm sure.
Because I'm sure there are people who believe in ghosts.
Yeah.
Which, if you're new to the podcast, I believe that ghosts exist and Kieran doesn't.
I do not.
He's a ham sandwich for that reason.
Yep.
Yeah, if you were a person who believed in ghosts and you had friends who believed in ghosts, if you told them you saw a ghost, they'd be inclined to believe you.
Yeah.
And you would talk about it.
That is true.
So I think it depends on who you are and who your friends are.
Mm-hmm.
A lot of factors at play. But that's not me saying that belief in banshees is particularly widespread anymore compared to what it used to be. I don't even really know what point I'm making anymore.
I don't know.
I'm very tired. This is me after 2 coffees and I'm still just like, what?
We'll bring it back around.
There's a Welsh version of the banshee who did the same thing as these Irish stories I just said. She only warned people who were Welsh about upcoming disaster.
I believe in Wales they're called a banshee.
That was awful. Rhiannon, if you're listening to this specifically, I'm so sorry. You specifically,
yeah.
I'm sorry.
I'd have more luck with that than an Irish accent. Although an Irish accent sometimes slips out of my mouth when I'm not paying attention, which is the
sometimes
weird.
You do that naturally. So, no, I think the Welsh was worse. But you've set me up to fail now because this banshee is known as the Witch of Ribbon, which I can't pronounce. And then we both sound stupid.
I always sound
Kieran.
stupid. That's why I'm here.
But it's spelled Rhibyn. But I know that with Welsh, a lot of sounds don't sound the way they're spelt.
Yeah.
So I'm wary about saying that's how you pronounce it because I don't believe it's true.
Rivin, maybe?
Maybe. I apologise. I'm so sorry. Sorry, Wales.
Sorry. I'm not sorry. The accent was flawless.
You never are.
Flawless.
You leave me to pick up the pieces.
So the Banshee of Wyvern,
Wales.
Wales.
Yeah, she does a similar thing to the Irish one where she only warns Welsh people,
Yeah.
not outsiders.
Quite nice. Knowing your country's still looking out for you, even after you've left.
Your country telling you you're going to die.
Yeah, that's true. Is it looking out for you?
I don't know, because I feel like it might be nicer not knowing.
Reporting back on you?
I suppose it depends on which version you believe in, whether you hear your own death call or you've heard the warning of the death of a family member.
Yeah, or the lament of a family member. Or countryman. Don't know.
I feel like I've given you a lot to ponder.
Yeah.
You just started.
Good thing I can just edit out all these long pauses I take to contemplate things. Makes me sound more snappy.
Now, despite the Banshee's reputation of just screaming horrors in the nighttime,
Yep.
what happens with the Banshee is what happens with most female deities or fairies of any kind, in that there are two different versions of what they look like.
Oh, yes, yes.
I sort of touched on a few of the physical appearance things earlier. But one version of the Banshee is that she's utterly terrifying, horrid looking, old, wizened, ugly, demonic, everything.
That's what I have.
But, sorry.
That's what I have based on television and games I've played with banshees in them.
Yeah. There is another version, though, where the Banshee is described as the, quote, sweet singing virgin of the family, unquote.
But of course.
So both exist,
Yeah.
but there is no in-between, because it's a female legend.
Banshees look regular.
So you're either completely undesirable, old and evil, or you're virginal, angelic and beautiful.
Well, there's both my qualifications out the window.
It's just really stupid.
It's
And
pretty
I've seen it
strange.
so many times researching this series, and I just...
It was big in the Fairy Queen episode last time.
Yeah. There's just so many things wrong with it. But both versions exist, so I wanted to bring them up.
It's always good to hear. It's good to know where we stand and don't stand.
One of the legends that is supposed to explain the origin of banshees says that people thought banshees were the ghosts or spirits of women who had died young and had died a virgin. So as a reward for their good life, because, never having sex automatically makes you a good person, apparently.
Absolutely, obviously.
They were rewarded with an eternity of protecting her family and warning them of doom by becoming a banshee.
Well, that's nice.
So you're rewarded for being a virgin by being forced into the eternal service of your family.
What any young woman should dream of.
There's so many things wrong with that.
Yeah.
It really bugs me.
Yeah.
But that's one of the origin stories of banshees.
Ooh. I wonder, I'm going to throw out a theory. Might come up later, you never
Do
know.
it.
That it was in coastal towns and places, which are very common in Scotland and Ireland,
Because
where
everything is the coast.
yeah, if there's space for some houses, it's probably by the coast because the middles are mountains. And when big storms came in, they howled and screamed and made awful noises in the night. But if you had family members in boats, that would obviously herald bad news. If they're stuck at sea in a storm that's
It's a good
howling.
theory. I like it.
That's what I think.
I have a couple of other practical theories that we'll get into in a bit that I think you'll enjoy because they're a similar thing.
Yeah, talking about how these stories tend to reflect people's fears and struggles.
Yeah, absolutely. Well, we talked a lot about that in the Selkies episode.
Yes.
That the reason that or I don't want to say the reason because we don't know, but one of the reasons those stories might exist is to bring comfort to those who have lost people at sea.
Yeah.
It's a way to understand it. Bring some comfort. But, you know, just let women be women. Jesus Christ.
That I'm not arguing with.
No, I know, but
That's definitely fair.
I think it bears saying, because, fuck, man.
Fuck.
You can't win.
Yeah, if that's winning, do you really want to win?
I know.
Nota.
Banshees are rarely seen in all the stories about them. Their defining feature is their wailing, rather than their physical appearance. But they're said to be able to disappear into a cloud of mist.
Ooh.
Which, cinematically speaking, bravo.
Very visual.
Very scary. And apparently when they do this, as they disappear into a cloud of mist, it supposedly makes the sound of birds flapping their wings as they vanish.
Very nice. Very
Again,
nice.
10 out of 10. Scary.
It's very vampiric as well.
Yes. Yes.
I like it. So maybe when we've driven past Culloden Battlefield in the past, because that's the main road to Inverness, one of them, and there's just pockets of mist float across it quite often, and they're in like the dips of the road as it humps. Maybe those were banshees.
Maybe. It's very creepy.
It's always very creepy.
I don't think I can say it enough how uneasy I get on Culloden Moor.
Yeah.
I don't like it. I don't feel comfortable. And there have been loads of times where we've driven past and I feel
Oogly.
tense. I don't like it. And I think one of the reasons is that mist and fog gather there quite heavily.
They do.
Like you can't see through it, and the fog sits only at the moor because then you drive through it and it disappears.
Yeah, it's always a bit creepy.
I have a video or a photo from one of the times we did that, and it was really foggy only at Culloden. I'll try and remember to post it.
Yeah, because it does happen.
I'll put it on Instagram if I remember.
Just there.
Well, yeah, maybe banshees. But then, would it be? Because on the basis that they warn you of death, death's already happened at Culloden Moor.
I mean, I'm sure other people still die in Culloden.
Morbid, but okay. You heard it here first, folks. No one knows how banshees know that death is coming. It seems to just be put down as one of their fairy powers. So you get your fairies that sweep up the floor, but they warn you of impending death. No one really knows where it comes from.
I wonder, when you're a fledgling fairy, it's like a job application thing.
Do you think you can be an apprentice banshee? Do you think you have to like do the grunt work as a just regular fairy and then you get to specialise?
Yeah, maybe. Or maybe if you're an apprentice fairy, you actually have to become like a metal singer first and be able to like do the screaming and all that like vocal work.
If you're as an apprentice banshee, you mean?
Yes, what did I say?
Fairy.
Yeah, as an apprentice banshee, you have to be a metal singer.
Interesting. I feel like you could write a really good kids book about fairies becoming apprentice different fairies.
Yeah, like you start off as a wisp.
I'm going to write that down. I think that's a good idea.
And then you get to choose what kind of fairy you want. I mean, if you needed a human likeness of a banshee, I've forgotten her second name, but it's Angela someone, who is the singer of Arch Enemy. She's quite banshee-like. She can sing very metal.
But what if a banshee singing sounds more like Amy Lee from Evanescence?
Well, I was thinking of a banshee screaming.
Banshee screaming, yeah, I'm thinking singing.
Yeah.
Maybe.
Much to ponder.
But yeah, despite this lack of understanding how banshees do what they do, belief in them used to be really quite widespread, particularly in Ireland. It was taken really seriously. And although the stories were vague, as usual, I read about soldiers abandoning battles and disobeying orders from their superiors because some of them believed that they had heard a banshee screaming the night before. So, believing this was to warn them that the battle wasn't going to go well, they were going to die, they would flee. And usually in these cases, they might be shot by their own side for deserting or murdered by the enemy as they tried to flee.
Yeah.
Which would set the legend into another cycle because word would get round that they heard the banshee, they fled the battle, and they died.
Well, it could be very self-fulfilling.
Yeah. So in this case, the banshee was still right.
Mm-hmm. And then if the banshee was wrong, you could just convince yourself, oh, I guess that wasn't a banshee.
Or it wasn't for me.
Yeah.
Imagine believing in something that much that you're willing to risk court-martial or the equivalent whenever this was happening. For
Mental.
desertion.
I really can't. I can't imagine having that strong a belief in anything, really.
Well, I guess if you translate it into like some kind of scientific theory that you can't see but you fully believe in, I have to assume that they felt something similar.
Yeah.
It's undisputable.
Ooh.
Now, I mentioned earlier that I had some theories about where the legends of banshees came from.
You did?
For these, I have 2 auditory aids to help me. Because some people think that the legends of the banshees come from something very simple. They think that the legends come from people hearing either barn owls or foxes calling in the night. Because these are quite strange sounds.
Okay.
Now, I think I've managed to track down the noises. So I'm going to play them for you.
Yep.
And you can just see what you think.
I'm up for that. You could spin your microphone round and share it with the group.
Yes, I will. Now, I don't know if these are going to sound quite right. I just tried to find a good one.
Are you going to do impressions of them?
No.
Caw-caw.
Wow. So scary. This first sound is the vixen, like a mating call
Okay.
of a fox. And we can talk about what you think. Okay?
I'm down. I'm here.
So you get the point.
I mean, that's pretty terrifying.
All that is a fox's mating call.
Yeah.
There's nothing sinister about that. The video, I can link it if it's useful, but it's just a guy who was recording foxes that had started denning under his shed.
Oh, cool.
So the 2 foxes were calling out for each other, and then later in the year, they made their den under his shed, so he watched
That's fun.
the cubs be born and everything. So he was just recording these foxes.
Yeah.
But see if you didn't know what that was.
I mean, that's a pretty chilling noise.
It's a scream.
It definitely, like, puts the hairs up on the back of your neck. Ooh.
So I don't think it's unreasonable to hear that and assume that it's something bad.
Yes.
Because it's quite scary. Like, I was quite creeped out.
Yeah, I'm pretty creeped out by that. That would definitely, even now, because I've said it before on podcasts, but when I walk past the woods at night, you hear noises from in the woods and it just sets you on edge. Because you don't know what it is in the dark. It's not so bad now because it's summer and light at night time. But if I walked past the woods and heard that, I'd probably turn around and come home again.
Right?
Just be like, nope.
Because I don't think you would ever assume that that's a fox.
No.
Or maybe you're smarter than I am, and you would, totally.
You might.
I'm sure people like that exist.
Now that you've heard it.
But if you didn't know...
Yeah, if you were hearing that for the very first time, what else could you think it was?
So that's one.
Yeah.
One possible theory. The second is people thought, or some people think that people are attributing the banshee to the sound of a barn owl.
This one's more surprising, because I would have thought I've heard a barn owl before.
Well, there's lots of barn owls around here.
Yeah, you see them flying around.
But I have that for you. Here. I have a couple. If this one isn't what I think, then I'll play the other one.
This is a barn owl. Again, pretty weird. It sounds a bit like the noise Ross makes when he's pretending to be that dinosaur.
Yeah, a little bit. I'm not as creeped out by the barn owl as I was by the fox. Mainly because I've heard that barn owl noise in the garden.
Yeah, that's a more familiar noise. I couldn't have told you it was a barn owl, but to me, if I heard that, I'd know it was a bird.
It's more bird-like,
Yeah.
I think.
There's something about the way it trails off at the end, in that second one especially. But if you didn't know that was a bird sound, and that was totally unfamiliar, I could see that'd be creepy. But to me, definitely the fox is more compelling.
Right, because it's more out of place.
Yeah, but that's to me because I've never heard it before. Perhaps if you live somewhere with lots of foxes, you'd know that instantly. Like, oh, well, that's a fox.
Well, that and maybe you'd hear the barn owl one and be like, oh, God.
Yeah. That's why context is important for these things, isn't it?
It reminds me a lot of hearing stags roaring for the first time.
Yes.
I suppose I could find that sound.
I think we've used that before.
Have we?
Go for it. The roar of the stag.
It's quite unsettling, and I used it to terrify my sister. So they're not banshees, but that's what stags sound like.
Yeah, it's also a very strange noise, isn't it?
So what do you think?
I think for me, the fox one is very compelling, because that would have freaked me out if I were to hear it in the here and now without a belief in banshees.
There's an awful lot about the quality of it that sounds human,
Yeah.
even though it isn't.
Yeah, the fox one sounds quite a lot like a woman doing a really like hoarse scream, and then the owl one I thought sounded quite a lot like a baby crying or something.
Yeah, it's definitely different.
Yeah, that would freak me out.
But I want to share them just because they're two of the theories as to where these stories come from.
I like it.
And this is very much a whistle-stop tour of banshee legends. Because the reason I bring them up is because there's one aspect of the banshee legend that I haven't spoken about yet.
Oh.
And one nickname given to banshees that I found very interesting when I went on to look at Scottish folklore.
Yep.
Some people would refer to the banshees as little washerwomen. And this is because some people claimed to see banshees by rivers washing the clothes of the person about to die.
Oh, that I've never heard before. That's brand new to me.
It's creepy.
Yeah.
Washing the bloody, ragged clothes of someone who's about to die. And you're screaming about them dying.
That would mess you up if you saw that.
But you see where I'm going with this, because this is what the whole episode is about.
Yes.
We're going to be delving more into this from here.
Yeah.
But I want to give you a bit of background into banshee lore first.
Creepy. Very, very creepy. The thought of seeing that. You never guess what I saw. Were you eating mushrooms from the woods again?
Stop eating foxes! I think we've talked about him before now in other episodes, but Donald Mackenzie was a Scottish poet who collected folk tales from all over the country and gathered them together into books of poems.
Sounds nice.
Poems. He wrote a poem about banshees that I have here to read to you, if you would like to hear it.
Well, you know how much I love getting a story read.
And he would basically write a poem about each specific type of fairy or monster by gathering everything that he could find out about them and putting it into verse. So he's doing what we're trying to do, but more concisely. But here's the poem. It's called The Banshee, and it's by Donald Mackenzie,
It's a good
if
name.
you would like to find it. Knee-deep she waded in the pool, the banshee robed in green. She sang yon song the whole night long and washed the linen clean. The linen that would wrap the dead, she beetled on a stone. She stood with dripping hands, blood red, low singing, all alone. His linen robes are pure and white, for Fergus Moore must die tonight. 'Twas Fergus Moore rode o'er the hill, come back from foreign wars. His horse's feet were clattering sweet below the pitiless stars. And in his heart he would repeat, "Oh, never again I'll roam. All weary is the going forth, but sweet the coming home. His linen robes are pure and white, for Fergus Moore must die tonight." I feel like we should do like a call and response. So when I give you the signal, you sing it back to me. Everyone listening to the podcast, sing it back.
Die when? Die tonight.
He saw the blaze upon his heart come gleaming down the glen, for he was fain for home again, and rode before his men. 'Tis many a weary day he'd sigh, since I would leave her side. I'll never more leave Scotland's shore, and yon my dark-eyed bride. His linen robes are pure and white, for Fergus Moore must die tonight. So dreaming of her tender love, soft tears his eyes would blind, when up there crept and swiftly leapt a man who stabbed behind. 'Tis you, he cried, who stole my bride. This night shall be your last. When Fergus fell, the warm red tide of life came ebbing fast. His linen robes are pure and white, for Fergus Moore must die tonight.
Whoa, very nice. That's a much more, strange way to put it, but it's personable way to picture a banshee
Yeah.
as a regular woman, as opposed to this more demonic figure I have in my head because of pictures and like illustrations people have done in the past.
Well, I think she's a blend of both. She's kind of... It's tricky.
Yeah.
But this poem brings in that part of the banshee legend of her by a river washing the clothes of the dead.
Yes. Preemptively.
And it sounds a bit outlandish and kind of nightmarish, but there are multiple fairies described in Scottish folklore who also do this.
Oh no.
And this is the basis of their legend. And
Yeah.
that's mostly what we're talking about today.
Interesting.
Have I made things confusing?
No, it's just a brand new concept of the Washerwoman.
Yeah, you've never heard of that before?
Never heard of that, even remotely.
I feel like I've come across more Scottish folklore than I gave myself credit for.
Yeah.
Because a lot of these I had at least heard mentioned or like read stories about.
Oh. But most of these are brand new to me. Outside of the ones mentioned in Terry Pratchett.
Fair.
Well, what do we know about Washerwomen?
Well, I'm going to check the pronunciation before I get going.
It's just washer, as in like wash her.
Washer? I don't even know her. Sorry, I'm sorry.
Ben-nighe.
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 Okay. You can keep that in if you want, I don't mind.
It sounds like that person is going, bin limle. Limle.
No. So it's Ben-nighe. I've got it on good authority.
Yep.
We're going to start with the Ben-nighe.
Okay. Is this one of the Washerwomen?
Yes.
Okay.
You should be scared.
Oh no.
She's known as the Washerwoman or the laundress. Similarly to the banshee, she's also considered to be an omen of death.
Mm-hmm.
And she has a very distinctive look, which you're going to have to grapple with.
Okay.
Imagine for me, if you will, an old woman
Yep.
with one nostril. Stay with me.
Okay.
I don't want to lose you. Stay with me. One nostril, one large tooth at the front of her mouth
Yep.
that protrudes and sticks out,
Yep.
and red webbed feet.
That's a combination. Okay. Yep.
Now, I know that sounds mental
That's a bit mental.
and kind of funny,
Pretty funny.
but allow the absurdity of it to wash over you
Yep.
and imagine what that would be like to actually see.
Yeah, it's not going to be a good time, is it?
Like, you'd meet her when you're out in the hills, and she's crouched by a stream, scrubbing at burial shrouds by hand to try and get the blood out of them. And the shrouds belong to people who are going to die.
Yeah, you can really just walk past me like, all right, and then kind of wander on, could you?
You know what I mean? Like, I know that it sounds crazy,
Uh-huh.
and like my first impulse is to laugh.
Yes, mine too.
But when you actually consider it, that's horrifying.
It's hard to consider the reality when it's so outside of reality
Well,
for me.
Does she sound ridiculous? Yes. Kinda.
Yes.
Do I want to see her for myself?
No,
Absolutely fucking not.
that's true. The red webbed feet.
Which, well, I actually thought that was quite a compelling feature
Oh, yeah?
because she spends all of her time by the water.
Yep, yep.
So, like having sort of red, raw, but webbed feet kind of makes sense.
Yeah. The one nostril is more unusual.
Yeah.
Do you think it's just like in the middle of her face?
A lot of the pictures I've seen have it as that.
Like a blowhole.
But I don't know. And one tooth.
One tooth. That's very like old crone, isn't it?
Yes, very much. That appears a lot in folklore.
Uh-huh.
Now, I'm not sure, in all my reading, I couldn't really tell. I'm not sure if the ben-nighe is a singular being, like the ghillie-dhu.
Oh, yeah.
You know, there's only one ghillie-dhu. I don't know if the ben-nighe is that, or if there are multiple of them.
Yeah.
I'm not sure. But one explanation given for why they exist at all is that they're the spirits of women who died prematurely during childbirth.
Oh.
And one of the horrible things I read is that, quote, they're doomed to perform their tasks until the day their lives would have normally ended.
Ooh. Oh, no.
So now we have women being punished and doomed for dying while giving birth.
Yeah.
Like,
Oh, I thought it meant the unborn children, but the women who died in childbirth. I'm with you.
yeah.
Oh, that's a hard pill to swallow.
Right. It's a real kick when you're down.
Yeah.
Worse than that, the legend goes on to explain that if you didn't want your relative who had just died in childbirth to become a ben-nighe, if she just died giving birth,
Yep.
you should make sure all of her clothes are washed and clean.
Oh.
Because otherwise, that's what she was sentenced to in the afterlife.
Oh.
She would be cleaning clothes forever because you didn't take the time to make sure all of her things were clean.
Oh, man. Well, I mean, that's a lot nicer than something I expected you to say. Like, I think you would say, like, burn her and then leave her half-burned body in a pit for a week or something. Utterly just bizarre and torturous.
No, that's next week. But, you know, like, if your family didn't do this, you were doomed to eternally do chores forever
Yeah.
because you died having a baby.
Yeah. Well, I mean, at least it's not forever. It's just for another, like,
True.
30 to 50 years.
True, I misspoke. That makes it fine.
That makes it totally fine. Ah, what's that?
There's no justice to be had here at all.
No.
And every time I come across it, I sigh and I'm just like, oh, why?
But it's a nice ritual to, like, clean all their clothes and things.
Yes.
I think that's quite nice.
Yeah, I can see how that would be beneficial.
That's very honourable.
Yes. There is one particularly strange part of the ben-nighe legend.
I mean, it's not one nostril?
No.
Okay.
There always seems to be one completely batshit aspect of every fairy legend. There's one detail that's just off.
There's always an and.
Yeah. So I know how you're going to react, so get ready because
Okay.
this one is really bizarre.
Okay.
I didn't tell you all of the distinctive features of the ben-nighe's appearance
Yep.
before. I left out one of the most important and strange ones because the ben-nighe has very, very long, low-hanging boobs. So I'll give you a minute. Add that to the pre-existing image.
That's going in there as well. Okay, okay.
Long, low-hanging boobs.
Long. You don't want your boobs described as long, do you?
No. No, you do not. Or maybe you do.
Maybe you do. You probably don't.
They're so long that as she's scrubbing the clothes, she throws them over her shoulders.
Well, otherwise they're just going to get in the way.
I'm going to give you some time. If you would like to make any puns, any jokes, I'm going to give you the floor to do that.
I think it's enough of a joke in itself. I don't want to sully it.
Fair. According to the legends, the ben-nighe becomes completely absorbed in the washing she's doing. Washing the clothes of the dead.
Yep. Imagine a lot of muttering and going, oh, for fuck's sake, it's dangerous, son of a cat.
I need to get some varnish. She's so absorbed in what she's doing that, yeah, because this is going to get weirder, by the way. That wasn't the only weird part.
Yep.
If you're quiet and sneaky, you can creep up behind the ben-nighe.
Okay.
Once you've managed this,
Do you grab her tits?
you're supposed to grab her boobs. I'll say right here from the off, this part of the legend is completely inappropriate and archaic and stupid.
Yep.
Not okay. This is just what the legend is. You're supposed to grab her boobs from behind and hold on to them.
Well, I mean, you'd be rendered pretty powerless if someone did that to you.
Oh no, it gets weirder.
Okay, okay.
You hold on to the boobs because once you have at least one boob, you put it in your mouth and you suck on it.
Why? Why are we doing this?
So is that at the people in the legend, or is that me and you? Like, why are we doing this?
Yeah, why? Why are we here? Why is this my life?
Well, the logic apparently is you have the boob in your mouth because you're pretending to be the bean-nighe's foster child so that she doesn't kill you.
Okay.
Obviously. And another part of the reason that you're going to all of this effort is because if you manage, the bean-nighe will give you 3 wishes.
Oh, that's not what I expected.
So what do you think now that you've heard the weird part?
Well, I mean, it's everything short of, and if you're too slow, she spins around quickly and you get knocked out by these flying tits. The momentum of which can kill a man if struck in the temple. That's the only further level of absurdity that was missing, I think. I think personally I just wander on.
Well, if you do that, you're dead because you're not supposed to turn away from the bean-nighe once you've seen her.
So this is your only choice.
It's this or death.
Well, I'm going to be careful next time I'm by a river and keeping my tits stored over my shoulder so I can wash something, let me tell you. Before a young fanciful gentleman tries to take advantage.
My long trailing boobs.
Of my big old long titty that he's going to shove in his mouth. Wrong or no wish yet? My first wish is for this to end.
I would like to remove this boob from my mouth. I don't think we were particularly PG before. We're definitely not now.
I tend to mark the episodes as explicit.
Yeah, this is why.
This is why. I've been bamboozled.
I know. I knew you weren't ready.
I wasn't ready.
But I had no way of preparing you.
No. And I feel this is where I should offer some sort of witty comment, but I'm too bamboozled.
Caught too by surprise. If you're editing, you could always come back later and record the joke you wish you had made.
Throw in something. Yeah, I'm just too struck by this image in my head now.
Mm-hmm. So when you're faced with this situation, you're supposed to pay close attention to the clothes that she's washing in the river because it's important. If the bean-nighe is washing the clothes of your enemy, then it's okay to let her continue doing that because it means your enemy's going to die.
Well, that's good.
It's very drastic.
Yes.
Like, I don't think I would wish that upon anyone.
Bit extreme, but fair enough.
Yeah, but in the legends, that's what you do. But if she's washing your clothes or the clothes of someone you care about, you have to try and stop her. Otherwise, it means you or they are going to die.
Yep.
Which is part of the reason for doing that and getting the wishes, because she will stop washing the clothes.
Yeah.
So you'll save yourself or someone you care about.
Yeah, presumably that's then what you use your wishes on. I'm dumbstruck.
This part of the legend, what I've just described, comes mainly from Mull and Tiree, which are 2 islands off the southwest coast of Scotland. Because the legend varies from place to place, as you'd expect.
It's obviously gone a little too insular over there in the past.
Boobs! On Skye, the legend warns you that although the bean-nighe will have to answer every question you ask completely truthfully if you manage to sneak up on her,
Yeah.
you will be forced to answer every one of her questions honestly too.
Now, is this while the tit is in your mouth, or are you allowed to remove it?
I'm assuming you're allowed to, empty your mouth so you can speak.
Well, that doesn't sound so bad. I feel a bean-nighe having information would be fine.
But then maybe she'll use that information to go after who you care about.
Oh yeah, this depends if she's from the Seelie or Unseelie court, as we've talked about in the past episodes. Like, is she there just doing her deathly duty by washing these clothes, or is she out to get you.
I guess that wasn't very clear. It wasn't clear where she is morally.
Yeah, because you should be aware of her either way.
Mm-hmm.
This is one of the ones where I'm not really getting the reason, the warning. What do you need to be careful of? What are you teaching people with this?
Well, I guess it just plays into every human's fear of death.
Not of long tits.
No. Not of long tits. But you know what I mean? Everyone is scared of death.
Yeah,
Or
that's true.
to a point. I know people vary, but
Yeah.
traditionally that is a universal fear.
Yes.
Now, the deal with the questions, would you take that deal? That you could ask her whatever you wanted, but you'd have to answer anything she wanted in return?
It depends. It always depends. But is she some sort of font of knowledge?
Well, she will answer any question you ask.
Okay, so
completely honestly.
I would just be best to ask her questions about stain removal, because that's her area of expertise.
Well, it's not like you would ask her all your questions, she'd be like, dunno.
Yeah. Yeah. So
In the stories, that's not how it goes.
So all I can tell you is this is how you get out stains, and yes, I just tuck them into my belt. But if she was a font of all knowledge...
Yeah, assuming you could learn whatever you wanted. That's what the stories insinuate.
Well, yes, because if she was a font of all knowledge, she would already know anything I could tell her. So she wouldn't gain anything by asking me questions.
Ugh, you with your logic.
Yeah. And then you could use one, if she was asking horrible things, you could then use one of your wishes to be like, can you forget everything I told you? She'd be like, shit, you got me. And then I'd ask for 3 more wishes.
I know. It's such a non-fun response.
Oh, thank you. Kieran bringing non-fun responses to the podcast.
Because I was thinking, I thought about it quite seriously. Because if I had the opportunity, I don't think I could trust myself to take it.
No.
Because I wouldn't have the willpower to not ask the questions that would probably be harmful to know about in advance.
Ooh.
I don't trust myself.
Fair.
So I feel like I would just have to not ask anything.
Yep.
For risk of finding out things I don't want to know.
That's fair. That's fair. I hadn't considered that.
Because
Yeah.
I don't think I have the willpower to not ask.
I don't really know what I'd ask either.
Well, see, I would end up being like, okay, well, like, when am I going to die? What's going to happen? And I don't want to know.
That's true.
So that was my thinking. Kind of like time travel. It's like, oh, well, would you go into the future to see yourself? I'm like, no.
Yeah.
No, because it's better not knowing.
I saw an interesting argument. Did I bring this up before? Of Brian Cox saying that time travel does exist because people who go up onto the International Space Station come back down and they have aged differently to people on Earth by minutes. Therefore, they exist in a different space of time. It's not fun though, is it?
No. No.
That's physicists ruining everyone's good time.
Now, I actually have a story about a man called Ewan McLean from Mull who encountered a bean-nighe on the island. Do you want to hear it, or are you done?
Yeah, let's hear what Ewan Titmouth has to say.
So judgy. God, Kieran McJudgerson over there.
That is my name.
It's just boobs.
It's Irish descent.
In the story, Ewan comes across the bean-nighe and is the worst case scenario. She's washing his bloody shirt in the stream. Now, Ewan knew what to do if he ever met a bean-nighe.
Yep.
Which was his only hope to save his life. He needed to know how he was going to die so that he could try and prevent it from happening. He managed to get one of her boobs, followed the procedure as he was taught, boob in the mouth. He also announced to her that she was now his foster mother, and she had to stop washing his shirt in the stream, and she had to answer his questions.
Very nice.
She wasn't happy about any of this, but she obliged. So he asked her about his death, and although she gave him a truthful answer, she went about it in a roundabout way. She leant in close with a really evil smile and told him that he was certain to die the following day, unless his wife gave him some butter with his breakfast the next morning.
Interesting.
Now, this sounded easy, but she continued that his wife would have to do this completely unprompted. He wasn't allowed to ask his wife for the butter. She had to do it without him saying anything. Now, at this point, Ewan's panic eased, because this would be easy. No problem. His wife did it every morning without fail. There was always butter at the house. It was always on the table.
Yep.
So he would be safe. He just had to get home. So he left the bean-nighe at the stream. She had stopped washing his shirt. And he made it back to the house, but very, very late at night. He didn't have a chance to talk to his wife at all. Not even about where he had been that day. Ewan woke up the next morning and his wife was already out of bed. He sat down at the kitchen table, breakfast table, and his wife presented him with his breakfast.
Lovely.
And she was so happy that he was home because she had been having trouble around their little farm. She hadn't been able to get any milk.
Uh-oh.
So hadn't had time to churn any butter.
Uh-oh.
And she was feeling really guilty because her poor husband was left with only dry bread to eat.
It's not going to be pleasant.
Now, Ewan, who'd been looking around for the butter on the table, stopped dead when he heard what his wife had said. There was no butter. None at all. And no butter meant Ewan was going to die.
Oh, no.
Now, he said nothing to his wife. He just went about his business, not really believing anything could happen. He knew that if something was going to come, he would be ready and it would be fine.
Yep.
So he left to hunt with other men from their clan, other men loyal to their clan chief. But on the hunting trip, they were met by a group of bandits from a rival clan. And in the skirmish that followed, Ewan's head was lopped from his shoulders. And he never came home.
Oh, my days.
What do you think?
Good story. Very nice. Very nice.
It combines an awful lot of different elements, I think.
Yeah. It gives to more context into how these interactions work. It's become clearer. I like it. And it suggests the bean-nighe is a little more tricksy.
Yes. She wasn't happy about being thwarted.
Yeah. And the answer she gave was kind of roundabout, because presumably she knew there wouldn't be any butter. Kind of thing. And him not being allowed to say and such and such. Interesting. I like it. I like it. I have a full picture now.
Yeah, there's a lot of different things with the questions and wishes and everything. In Perthshire, it's a little bit different. You can catch the bean-nighe by getting in between her and her stream. So you have to distract her, lure her away, and then bolt and stop her from getting back to the stream's edge.
Very nice.
So that's how you do it. And there's even a version of the story from France. They have their own version of a bean-nighe. And what happens then is, if you come across her, she'll ask you to help her with her washing.
Oh.
You know, she doesn't look like a fairy to begin with. If you help her, you're safe because you've done the right thing. But if you refuse to help her with all her washing, she'll drag you into the stream and break your arms.
Oh, that took a turn. Oh, no.
Creepy, eh?
That is creepy. That's why you should help washers.
Well,
Washerwomen.
be a good person.
Be a good person.
No one's going to break your arms.
And you won't get your arms broken and thrown into a stream. Could happen. That's interesting. It's made it all the way down to France, though.
They have their own version. It's not the same.
But it's similar.
It's still a washerwoman by a stream. I have one more bean-nighe story before we move on to our final scary washerwoman of the episode. And this one is pretty local to us.
Oh.
Which I thought you would be excited to hear.
Yep.
This story concerns Fern Abbey.
Oh.
I grew up very close to this abbey, and we have friends who still live just around the corner from the abbey.
Yeah.
We've been there. It's a real place.
Yep.
It's not just vague detail. I thought you'd be keen.
Yes, I'm here. I can picture it. I've driven past it.
Exactly. It's the 1700s. And a woman from the area was walking along the edge of Loch Slin. Now, this seems to be a loch that did exist, but doesn't anymore.
Oh, interesting.
And there used to be a castle called Loch Slin Castle. And the last ruins of this castle collapsed in the 50s. So you can't see it in the same way anymore. It's all very close to Fern, but the places that are talked about did exist, but don't now. If you know the area, are familiar with it, Lochslin Castle used to be about half a mile away from Loch Eye, which you can still visit. That loch is still there, and I have canoed on it as a child.
Very good.
We used to do that a lot. So if you're familiar, it's around there. A woman was walking along the edge of the loch, and she saw something strange. She saw another woman standing in the water of the loch, and she had long, wet hair and an overall dreadful appearance. And then she saw that the woman in the water was washing clothes on some rocks in the loch, like sort of beating them in to get the dirt out. She looked more closely and realised it wasn't clothes that the woman was washing. It was a death shroud. And that was when she saw what lay on the shore ahead of her. 30 shirts, all covered in blood. The woman ran, knowing now that this was a bean-nighe, and knowing what this omen meant after seeing all of the shirts and everything all together. She was able to get away without being spotted by the bean-nighe herself. But as the days passed, this woman could not relax with what she had seen. She couldn't get it out of her head. 30 shirts had lain on the shore of the loch, all being washed by the bean-nighe. She knew something terrible was going to happen, but she didn't know what. So she didn't know who to warn. Sunday, 10th of October, 1742. Not long after the women's encounter. The local community all gathered for service in Fern Abbey. Now, the weather was awful, as you can imagine, Kieran. The Highlands in October, it can be brutal.
Yep.
So the shelter of the abbey was welcome to everyone who was there. The minister stepped into the pulpit and began to preach. But then something awful happened. In what could be described as an act of God, the church was struck by lightning.
Oh, that's not good.
The church was struck by lightning. The lightning strike was so violent that it caused the roof of the church to collapse with the congregation inside. They were buried underneath the rubble in the church, and anywhere between 36 and 50 people were killed.
Ooh.
This is something that actually happened. There are historical records to prove that this collapse did occur and these deaths did happen. The minister survived the collapse, largely because he was sheltered by the pulpit he was standing in. The debris landed on that instead of him, which offered him a little bit of protection. The church had to be rebuilt, and the minister pushed for much of the stone from the old church to be used for the new one, which is what's standing now.
Crazy. Churches are always fundraising for new roofs.
Well, this is why they keep getting struck by lightning.
That's an ominous one, isn't it?
Right?
I like that it's close to home.
I thought you would enjoy it. I have some detail. I looked into the facts, and this did happen.
I'm still trying to imagine, because I can't imagine seeing these things, because I don't believe they actually happened. But imagining being in that position and trying to imagine you've seen that. Yeah, I'm trying to imagine seeing all these bloody shirts and a figure washing them. Yeesh. That's all I can say.
It's creepy.
It's creepy.
It's really creepy.
It's ominous.
You can imagine it as a scene in a horror movie.
Yeah. Very creepy. Very spooky. Very just, oh no.
And backed up by some fact.
Yeah.
The roof did collapse.
Ugh.
I know.
So who have we got? Who's our final washerwoman?
Well, I need to double check the pronunciation again.
That's okay.
Because I did check, but I've forgotten.
Happens to the best of us.
Caoineag.
Played a bunch of different pronunciations and they all pronounce it differently now.
I know. Well, we're going to round off the episode and I'm going to tell you about the caoineag.
Sounds good.
And I'm hoping at some point you'll get a shiver up your spine.
Ooh.
If I deliver this correctly.
It's a weird thing to wish upon me. I like it.
Yes.
Go on.
Well, it's spooky season, okay? We're getting ready for season 4. I'm pumped. Shivers up the spine.
Shivers up the spine.
The caoineag. In many ways, the caoineag is kind of like a blend of the bean-nighe and the banshee, which is why I've saved the caoineag for last. Because I think if you understand all the different legends, you'll kind of see why this fairy has come into being. Usually the caoineag is a female fairy who lives in mountains or by lochs and streams. But unlike the bean-nighe, she's usually invisible. You're not going to run into her in the same way, even though they live in similar places.
Mm-hmm.
She's invisible, and she definitely won't grant you any wishes.
Okay.
So you shouldn't approach her if you do see her by any chance.
I can manage that.
But the main way you'll know that a caoineag is present is her wailing in the night, like a banshee.
We're going full circle.
But what makes the caoineag different is that her wailing usually predicts death in battle.
Oh.
Rather than just a death in the family, for any number of reasons. And in the legends, each Scottish clan has their own caoineag that tries to protect them or alert them that danger is coming.
That, I like that, coming back to the familial banshee. This makes sense to me, weirdly.
You're more on board with the caoineag.
Yes, because there's a very clear purpose. I'm like, I'm here, I'm invested.
On Eilidh, their traditions say that the caoineag also visits her clan when someone's about to die from illness. And there's one story about an older man from Clan Mackay who is on his deathbed with his family around him. And the family begin to hear sobbing from just outside the door to the home. Truly haunting wailing as the caoineag mourns the dying man. And they knew then, without a doubt, that he was definitely going to die, that he wouldn't recover, because that's what this wailing meant. Now, the wailing went on and on all through the night, and eventually they felt so badly for the caoineag and her pain that one of the men stepped out the other door of the house, laid out his plaid on the ground for her, and then came back inside. And then he called to the caoineag outside the door she was crying from to go round to the sheltered side of the house and keep warm in his plaid.
It's very nice of him.
Because her wailing was so terrible.
Yeah. It's very chilling to imagine the anthropomorphization of...
That was a $10 word.
...pain in that way. Because you do have all this grief and things. And I think you can very much imagine what that kind of wailing is.
Yeah. Unhinged.
Yeah. Yeah, uncontrollable sadness. But it's interesting that they're not afraid of it, because he tries to help her, which suggests he's not afraid that she's out there.
No.
He feels sorry for her.
It was kind of like a fairy version of death.
Yeah.
You know that when she's there, that's what that means.
Mm-hmm.
She's also referred to as the caoineag. But from what I've seen, that's a slightly different fairy.
Okay.
I've tried to separate them the best I can. But just if you're hearing this and you've heard that different name, I know.
That's what's up there.
Yes, but it's difficult to separate everything and explain it all.
Yeah, I feel the caoineag is much more neutral, because she's not so much a bad omen as a fact.
Well, I feel like, I don't even know if she's as far as neutral, because I feel like she's trying to protect them.
Yeah, that's true.
And trying to warn them, and like she's mourning with them.
Yeah, she's definitely on side, much more than... But then this is my preconceived idea of the banshee, that the banshees are bad.
True. But in some stories they are.
Yeah.
A folklorist called Alexander Carmichael wrote about the caoineag in a book called Carmina Gadelica, which is quite a famous book of Scottish folklore.
Okay.
It seems like it's quite controversial. Some people online hold it up as a great example of documenting Scottish folklore and life in the Highlands and Islands. Other people really don't like it. I don't know enough about it yet. I don't know enough about the context to have an opinion one way or the other.
Well, it makes sense when banshees can be beautiful or horrible, that when you believed one and someone said the other, that would become quite controversial, wouldn't it?
Some people really don't like it. So.
Yeah.
Although I don't understand it fully, because I haven't had the time to look into the background, I see you if you don't like it. But the reason I bring up the caoineag at all is because of one legend in particular that I have had in my pocket basically since we started the podcast.
Oofed.
Because it completely enchanted and scared me. And it's not even particularly long. It's just something that completely captured my imagination and horrified me.
I'm excited.
Carmichael wrote about one caoineag in particular in his book. He wrote about the caoineag of the MacDonalds of Glencoe.
Oh, from the Glencoe massacre. A bit of a chill.
We've talked here on the podcast about the massacre of Glencoe that happened back in 1692. So if you'd like to know everything about it, or as much as I was able to explain, you can listen to our episode, because I'm not going to get into detail here. But after conflict with the British government and issues to do with allegiance to the king, about 30 members of Clan MacDonald were murdered in their homes in Glencoe. That's the nutshell version.
Yes.
It was a pretty horrific moment in Scottish history. It's known for its brutality and the shock of guests turning on their hosts who had been offered Highland hospitality, which was a big deal. But the night before the massacre, several people who were there recalled hearing screaming and wailing from the glen around them. And they couldn't see who it came from, but they could hear a woman sobbing all around the valley. Now, some accounts talk about people hearing this wailing, attributing them to the caoineag, and then sneaking out from under the government soldiers before the attack began, knowing what her sob meant and becoming scared of the soldiers in their homes. That's the reason a lot of them left.
Can you make it a bit of a chill up my spine, maybe?
Carmichael also recorded in his book some snippets of the lament that the caoineag apparently sang that night.
Ooh.
And I have it here to tell you. Yeah, I'm not going to sing. Don't worry. Don't panic. That's not happening. But here's what he wrote. Little caoineag of the sorrow is pouring the tears of her eyes, weeping and wailing the fate of Clan Donald. Alas, my grief that ye did not heed her cries. There is gloom and grief in the Mount of Mist. There is weeping and calling in the Mount of Mist. There is death and danger. There is maul and murder. There is blood spilling in the Mount of Mist. And the next morning, as you know, many members of Clan MacDonald fell under the sword, and others may have died from exposure after the fact.
Ooh, that's unsettling.
What do you think? That is everything I have for you on the caoineag and Scottish Washerwomen. But I want to know what you think about this before we finish.
This specifically, it's a story I hope is true, because if she helped people escape that brutality, then that would be nice. But I'm a ham sandwich and I just can't believe it. It just doesn't make sense to me.
Not even with my flawless delivery of the tale?
It's an excellent story, but it's always just a story to me. But it definitely puts the caoineag as being good on the morality spectrum, I think.
It's tricky because she's an omen of death.
Yes.
And very, very scary to me.
Yep.
But also meaning well.
Yeah. Well, if it can forewarn and save you, it's not necessarily a certainty, then I think that's quite nice. That'd be quite useful. A warning of danger. Lethal danger.
I've known about this story related to Glencoe for such a long time.
That's so funny. Where did you hear it?
Oh, I don't even know now. It's been such a long time.
Yeah.
And there's different versions I remember hearing growing up, where it was the spirits of the glen who were crying for what was about to happen.
You do learn about the Glencoe massacre in primary school.
So I don't know if that's where it started, maybe.
Maybe.
But I've known about it for a long time. But I didn't feel right putting it in the episode, because I wanted to focus on what really happened and what you can document and the true horror of it. I didn't want to take away from that.
Yes.
If that makes sense.
Yeah,
we talked a bit about how there's supposedly ghosts in Glencoe.
Yeah.
That felt okay. But for me, I don't know, there was just a line.
Yeah, I think this is separate. I think that's reasonable.
But it has a place here.
Yes. And it's good you got to tell it. That was nice. That's a nice... It's almost a bit of niceness amongst all the horrors that were that episode. That's a tough episode.
Well, see, for me, this story gives me a chill.
Yeah.
If I think about being in Glencoe the night before, it creeps me out anyway if I put myself there. But then imagining hearing that, it gives me the shivers. There's something about it in particular that gives me the shivers.
Yeah.
Which is why I really wanted to tell it to you, even though it's very short.
Powerful, though.
Yeah, I think so.
And if everybody heard it who's at Glencoe, the murderers...
Well, exactly.
If they're there, I'm like, did anybody else hear that? No. Nothing to worry about. Don't worry. So, well, you look really somber. Yeah, don't worry about it. Just go to sleep.
Well, because a lot of the soldiers had their orders like the morning of, or it's only some of them the night before.
Yes.
So if you imagine them hearing that, because we talk about it in the episode, but a lot of them felt uneasy about carrying out the order.
Yeah.
Anyway, because like, it's not battle. There's no honour in that because...
It was slaughter.
Well, you're killing them in the night. There's no battle there. It's not fair. So a lot of the men, to their credit, they weren't just evil.
Yeah.
A lot of them struggled with doing it. So imagine being in that position, if this was real, and hearing that, and knowing what you're going to have to do.
Be too much.
That's why it gives me the chills.
Yeah. It's too much for my little brain to comprehend.
Most things related to Glencoe give me the shivers, but this in particular, there's something about that image or that sound that gets me.
Yeah.
But maybe it's just me, I don't know.
It gets me less, but I'm just not as empathetic as you are.
Well, those are the Scottish Washerwomen.
Well, that was certainly more brutal, as promised.
In a good way, in a bad way. Brutal just to sit and listen to.
Yeah, just a train wreck of me sitting here. Oh my god. Really interesting, though. That was a lot of brand new information for me.
It's an odd facet of folklore, I think.
Yeah. It's one I will struggle to organise in my head. And struggle to reason with. Because it's just really weird. I did wonder if the one nostril thing is like when you see a skull that doesn't have a nose.
Oh, yeah.
It's just got the big hole in the middle of your face.
Maybe.
It's almost like a mistranslation of one nostril.
Maybe. Next week, we are getting considerably darker.
Again? Mm-hmm. Oh, no.
I've saved the biggest and baddest for episode 5.
I know, the end of the miniseries.
I know. I can't believe it.
I know.
It's passed really fast.
It has. Flown in.
So yes, get ready for next week. It's gonna be grim.
Yes, it is.
Kind of, but still fun.
But you should listen because it's a good time.
Educational. So it counts. It's summer holidays and you're still at school.
Yes.
If you're interested in hearing more from us, head over to Patreon.
Yes.
We are posting there 3 times a week.
Yep.
2 times a week.
Extra content over there.
Mm-hmm. We have our Wee Blether series where we just chat.
Yep.
Unscripted. It's a good time.
Doing things such as the quiz you heard.
Yep. We have our book club.
Yes.
We are reading The Turn of the Screw by Henry James at the minute.
Mm-hmm.
And if you join, you get access to all the past chapters. We are also posting extra episodes there. There will be 1 this month because season 4 starts and I can't do extra episodes and main episodes.
Yep.
But there's a catalogue there. I think we have 8.
Around 8, or it will be 8.
So if you can't get enough, there's more for you over there.
Yeah. And you help support small independent creators like ourselves.
Because the money pays for all of our hosting and like all of the stuff you don't think about.
Yep.
It's all covered. So we can bring this to you at no cost to ourselves.
Yes.
It's great. We are also on Instagram at Generally Spooky. We are on TikTok as at Generally Spooky Podcast. Kieran's been doing a lot of amazing, funny stuff over there.
Well, you know.
I think it's funny. I like it.
I have a good time.
You can come see cute photos of Odin and cute videos of Odin and basically all the Odin content you could ever want.
Yep. Our lovely boy, the dog.
But we will see you next week.
We will indeed. Bye.
Bye.